Okay, welcome to another Orbiter 2010 video, and in this video I'm back on Mars. I'm still with the XR5 Vanguard. This is going to be my this is going to be another Learn With Me. I'm assuming this is going to be number 2. And in this video I'm going to go from Mars out to Saturn, and I plan to land on one of the moons of Saturn, and that moon is going to be Titan. I've got a base that I downloaded and added to Titan, so I think it'll make for a good target. Now, I'm going to take some of the things that I learned from the first Learn With Me that I did, and that mainly one of the things is that I'm not going to load the XR5 down with fuel before taking off. So I'm going to fly over to Phobos as part of this mission to pick up a lot of fuel and LOX. So I'm only going to have 14 days worth of oxygen, but that'll be that's way more than enough to get out to Phobos. So I'm going to have a very lightly loaded vessel, relatively speaking, for taking off from Mars. Makes sense to get out to Phobos because it's a natural satellite of Mars, and then we'll load up from there and take off out to Saturn. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is find a date that I can use to go to Saturn, because I'm recording this video Saturday, September 29th, 2012, and more than likely I can't use this day for Saturn, so the first thing I want to do is figure out when I can go. So we're going to set TransX up here. We're going to go escape, forward, pick our planet, which is going to be Saturn, go to eject plan, add in the prograde that we need to get out to the orbit of Saturn. It's going to be something like that. Then we're going to go over to the date and bump it forward. And now we're going to have to come back over to prograde, add in some more prograde. Back over to date, prograde, date, and it's looking like that's going to be about where we're going to need to be for date. So let's bring up TransX on this side, view the encounter, and let's dial this in a little bit. So let's switch over to plane change, and that's going to be the wrong way, so let's go this way. And fine-tune the prograde. Just doing a little bit of fine-tuning here. Okay, let's work with the date here a little bit on a finer setting. We're getting pretty close. Let's do a little bit here with the date, see what we can do. That's got us basically out to Saturn. Let's just go with that for now. So let's look at the date. It's going to be 5/6/586. So let's write that down. Five six 586.2255. Alright, let's close this out. Control S to save the scenario. Let's back out of orbiter. I think you can use the scenario editor, but again, I'm not going to do it that way. Let me bring up the scenario file. Okay, and the date that we wanted was 5/6/586, but what I'm going to do is put it in as 5/6/585.2255. That gives me 24 hours, and that'll give me time to get over to Phobos. So let's go ahead and save it. Close that out. Let's reload the scenario. And that was XR5. This one, okay.
Welcome aboard, Commander. All Vanguard systems nominal. External cooling online.
Okay, so now I'm going to select a line plane, and I'm going to target Phobos. And what I want to do now is fast forward time until the relative inclination is as low as it's going to get. I'll bring up map MFD over here, and I'll target Phobos. Let me change the display to orbit plane. And you can see here that the orbital plane of Phobos is basically perfectly equatorial with Mars. So from our launch site, we can't get into perfect plane with Phobos. We would have to basically drive south quite a ways to get closer to the equator and then take off. So the only real option that we're going to have here is to take off, go to a 90-degree heading, and then we're going to have to do a plane change once we get up into orbit. I think I can probably do a better plane change than I did in the Mars to Phobos video that I did several months back. And when I did that video, I got up into orbit and I did a plane change while I was still in a tight orbit around Mars. That's a little bit expensive, I believe, in terms of doing a plane change that way, because the slower your velocity is, the more plane change you can do for less fuel cost. So it would actually be more fuel efficient to raise your orbit first and then do the plane change. So I'm going to try to incorporate the plane change when I'm further out away from Mars in this flight. So let's give this a shot. First thing I'm going to do, again, warp time ahead till the relative inclination is low. or lower. I believe it gets down to 11.6 or thereabout. Okay, that's as low as it's going to get. You'll notice that the rate went from negative 0.000 to positive 0.000. So now that means that the rate is going to start increasing. So it's time to go. Turn on the APU. Gonna open the hover doors. I've already eliminated all the scram fuel. I don't believe that I'll be able to really use the scram engines very effectively here on Mars. So I'm not gonna have any scram fuel. Let's see here. Let's turn rotation on. And we're gonna hover up and rotate to 90, so let's just get going.
Using external cooling offline. Wheels up. Gear up. Gear up and locked.
Can see Demos there. Okay, that's 90. Full throttle. Gonna pitch up a few degrees.
Mach 1.
And turn off the hover. Close the hover doors. And I'm gonna watch that rate to make sure that it doesn't go to a make sure it doesn't go positive. And we're gonna pitch up steeply here until we get to 20 kilometers or thereabout.
Mach 3.
Take a look at the external camera for a
Mach
moment.
4.
You can see us pulling away there from Olympus, almost at Brighton Beach.
Mach 5.
Go ahead and go back level now.
Mach 6. Information. APU running. Mach 7.
Okay, I can see my rate went to positive 0.000, so I might yaw just a little bit here in a moment once I get the vessel level. I don't really need the map at the moment, so I'm going to bring up orbit MFD.
Mach 9.
I'm not using my joystick this time, I'm just using keyboard
Mach
controls.
10.
Okay, now I'm yawing a little bit because I can actually see the relative inclination went to 11.61. We definitely don't want it to go up.
Mach 11. Information. APU running. Mach 12.
And I guess we don't need APU.
Mach 13.
Okay.
Mach 14.
Now I just need to keep an eye on the apoapsis. Don't really necessarily need to worry about it being at 200 or 300 because we are going to Phobos and we need to get out into orbit quite a way.
Mach 16.
Go ahead and go with that. Switch over to orbit, HUD, go prograde. Now, normally at this point I would kind of take notice here of when I'm going to reach the descending node, but I'm not going to worry about I'm not going to worry about bringing down the relative inclination at the descending node. I first want to circularize the orbit, and then I'm going to set up TransX for my plan to get out to Phobos, and I'm going to try to incorporate the plane change into that maneuver. So hopefully I can get a more fuel efficient plane change. So let's go to apoapsis. Okay, we're almost at apoapsis. Back to prograde. Okay, just a few seconds away from apoapsis, and burning to circularize the orbit. Okay. Now let's bring up TransX. There's actually a way to have two different instances of TransX, and I wish I had that enabled at the moment, and I don't. So I'm going to actually have to reset my plan for getting out to Saturn. Not a big deal, but if I had the separate instance of TransX, I could keep the Saturn plan and then use the other instance of TransX. So that erases the Saturn plan. Now we're going to set this to go to Phobos. Turn maneuver mode on. And the first thing I got to do is raise the orbit out to the altitude of Phobos. And I'm going to go to plane change here and see if we can incorporate the plane change into the burn. Looks like that might be going the wrong way. Something like that. Okay, now we don't want to do the burn right this very second because that's already passed. So let's reset that. And now let's bump this forward a little bit, at least to give us a few minutes. Okay, now let's work with the other variables. Bring that closest approach all the way down. Okay, let's add in a little bit of outward. It's actually not helping. So let's reset that. Let's bump the date forward a little bit more. It's actually using a lot more prograde than is necessary, so let me back that way off. So let's go with something like that. Now let's just bump the date forward. That'll be more efficient. Let me reset the plane change. Now let's add in as much plane change as we need. Okay. That's looking better in my opinion. Okay, we'll go with that. Says we're about 27 kilometers away. That's not bad. We might be able to do a little bit of a mid-course correction as we get closer to Phobos, but it may not even be necessary to do that. So let's see how this goes. Let's bring up target. Now according to target, the burn is 6,000 seconds away. That's a while. So what I'm going to do is warp time forward until we're at, say, 1,000 seconds, and then I'm going to check on. Then I'm going to check the maneuver and see what the closest approach is at that point. Let's go ahead and warp time ahead.
Warning, coolant temperature.
Radiator.
Warning, systems overheating. Warning, systems failure. Oxygen flow
Systems
offline.
rebooted. System reset.
Almost had another catastrophic failure there. That cooling stuff will get you every time if you don't make it part of your checklist. Alright, back on track here. I'm usually good with the radiator, but I just forgot about it this time. Okay, so we're coming up to almost 1,000 seconds. Go back to real time. Now what I want to do is check the maneuver. You can see now that the closest approach is showing 71 kilometers. So I'm going to make a little bit of an adjustment here. And we'll just go with the different variables. See what does what. Plane change is helping quite a bit. It's got it down to 51 kilometers. Now let's check prograde. See if we can add in a little bit of outward to help us out. We've got our closest approach down to 7 kilometers. Looks like by going back and forth between plane change and outward, we're able to improve that. 4 kilometers is really close. Let's just go with that. Still 800 seconds away from the burn. Okay, getting really close. Let's go prograde, try to get our X lined up. Okay, 10 seconds away from the burn. 3, 2, 1, burning. .500 seconds left in the burn, or rather 500 delta V. Now it's down to almost 300. Backing off the main engines.
Translation.
Okay, over to maneuver and off. Shows we're going to be 7 kilometers away, but that will vary a little bit by the time we get over there. The encounter date with Phobos is still today. It's only a little bit from now. So let's go ahead and warp time ahead and just kind of watch our closest approach. See if we might want to think about doing another maneuver when we get over here. That's going to be Phobos there. This is us. Alright, let me try something here and go prograde. And let me just play with the translation a little bit to see what happens with the closest approach. So by doing a little bit of translation this way, it's bringing it down. A little bit that way. Save me the trouble of setting up a maneuver. Okay, right about there. Alright, now let's
Rotation.
Let's turn around and see if we can see Phobos. It's behind us. Can't see it quite yet. Let's warp time ahead a little bit. There it is. Okay, now let me bring up Attitude MFD and get an idea. Okay, according to Attitude MFD, Phobos is 790 kilometers away, and that's actually giving me the distance to the dead center of Phobos. So it's the surface of Phobos is actually closer than that.
Translation, rotation.
So now I want to rotate so that I put all the direction to forward aft. So I'm working with the vertical first. You can see the vertical is getting closer to 0. And now I'll do lateral. Okay, so all the movement is now in forward aft, so I'm going to open the retro doors.
APU offline.
And now I'm going to use burn time calculator to tell me how long it's going to take to eliminate all that velocity using retro engines. So let me change the engines. Right now it's on main. Now it's on retro. And we're approaching okay, this is the relative velocity 962. So let's put in that number. Okay, so using the retro engines, I need to begin the burn when I'm 106 kilometers away from Phobos. And what that says is I'll eliminate this much velocity in that amount of distance. Now if I use the main engines, it would be, the distance would be much less, but then I wouldn't be able to see the target as I was approaching it. And I'd kind of like to be able to watch it. But as I get closer, I'll keep an eye on this number, and if it increases significantly, which I don't think it will, but then I'll put in a new number here Like right now it's gone up to 964. That's not going to be significant, but let's just put in that number. And you can see now it says it'll take 107 kilometers to eliminate that velocity. And then I'll also keep an eye on the vertical and lateral and do any additional pitching and yawing that I need to do. Okay, that's got the vertical at 0. And that's got the lateral at 0. Now we've got a relative velocity difference of 966. So let's call it 970. And that's going to be 108 kilometers. So when this distance is at 108 kilometers, actually I'm not going to use that distance readout because again that's the readout to the center of Phobos. So let me do this. Let me reference Phobos. And I'll use this number because this is the distance to the surface, whereas that's the distance to the center of Phobos. Okay. So for our first part of the mission to Saturn, we are just making a fuel stop. That's what this whole process is about here for going over to Phobos. But you can see if you compare the fuel usage to getting off of Mars using just the main engines without loading the cargo compartment down with fuel and LOX, I mean it's much more fuel efficient. Go ahead and warp time ahead here a little bit, get closer to Phobos. Okay, that's now gone to 970, which matches what we've got there. If it continues to go up, I'll go ahead and make a change. Let's say that it's going to be 973 maybe. So now we want, when our distance is 109 kilometers, let's go forward. Okay, we're getting really close. Let's go back to real time and let's get ready to do this burn. Okay, we've got the retro doors open. Let's do any last minute yawing and pitching. Go ahead and start the burn. A little bit early, but I'm only doing a little bit of okay, now... Alright, now we're fully engaged on the retro engines. Just doing a little bit of yawing there to bring the lateral down to 0. There it is. Now a little bit of pitching. And that's basically 0. So we're just keeping an eye now on the meters per second. This is how quickly we are approaching Phobos, and this is how far away we are from the surface of Phobos. So if this reaches 0 before this does, we're in trouble. But I believe I started the burn a little bit early, so it should be no problem. Take a look at the external. And we've also got a specific target on Phobos. The fuel payload and LOX payload is on a specific point, so I've got to find that point on Phobos, which will be it'll add a level of difficulty, but it'll also make the mission a little cooler, in my opinion. That's as opposed to just landing on Phobos and then saying, okay, we're here, so now let's just use the payload editor. Now, I don't have a base. I wish I did. I wish I had like a platform that I could land on. That would be really nice, but I don't have any kind of platform or base for Phobos, so the payload's just laying on the surface. Now I'm wondering if I did the calculation correct, because I'm getting awfully darn close. Yikes.
5,000.
I'm too close to turn around and use the main engines.
4,000.
No, I'm okay. Yep, we're good. Cutting it pretty close, but we're good.
3,000.
Okay, you can see we are basically 3 kilometers above Phobos, and we are almost at a dead stop.
Translation.
Our meters per second is almost 0. Now it is 0. Cool. Now let's rotate.
Rotation.
Actually, I guess there's really no need to rotate yet. Let me close that out. I don't believe I need it at the moment. Let me bring up, I believe map is going to be what I'm going to want here. And I'm going to reference Phobos. And the fuel modules are located at actually I have to think about it. Target, no base. Bring up map in a larger view. It's kind of small. Reference Phobos, there we go. No target, no base. Okay, I've got to get to 160 west. And I'm wanting to say it's 31 south. I believe that's where the fuel module's at. I'll have to double check to make sure. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. Or actually, I'm going to end this video at this part. So I'll just call this part 1. And then I'm going to actually Control S here. Let me save this. And then pause it. So that's going to be part 1. And when I pick back up, I'm going to start exactly from the spot right here. And then we're going to land on, we're going to look for the fuel modules, and then we're going to land on Phobos so we can pick up those fuel modules. If you have any questions or thoughts about this part of the video, go ahead and leave a comment down below. And I'll see you in the next part. Thanks.